Back at it here with another edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. With you, as always, Jeffri Chadiha from the NFL Network, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Stars, Soren Petro here from Sports Radio 810 WHB. Talking some Chiefs football. They hit the bye week 5-0. We discuss who is the biggest threat for the Kansas City Chiefs out of the AFC West and the AFC in general. Where's the Chiefs' first loss going to come? What wide receiver could the Chiefs realistically acquire? I have all the questions about the number 2 cornerback been answered. Are we secure? Are we confident that that's not a problem? Jawaan Taylor ranks 4th in the league in penalties. Is that simply who he is, or is that actually a sign of progress? Should the Chiefs be worried about George Karlaftis and Michael Danna not getting home? Second on the Chiefs in sacks is 1.5. Is that going to be good enough the rest of the year? And is there a role for Clyde Edwards-Helaire? We're discussing it right now here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeffri Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeffri Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is the sports columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by David Starnes Allstate Insurance, covering all the important things in your world: home, business, life, and even the fun stuff as well. Motorcycle, boat, ATV, you name it. Get with Dave and he'll have you covered. You can give Dave and his crew a call, visit them online, or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave. He'll give you peace of mind today for the things in your life most important to you. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeffri Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. And thank you for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Remember, if you're catching us via the podcast, you can be a part of the conversation. Tuesday nights at 9:30 p.m. Central Time, and then Fridays at 10 a.m. This is the Friday edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. As I mentioned, Chadiha, McDowell, Petro with you here. And guys, they hit the bye week at 5-0, so they're tops in the AFC. Only team undefeated in the AFC, only one of 2 in the NFL, the Minnesota Vikings. The other one, they're also on a bye week, so both teams will be undefeated when they take the field in week 7. Jeff, let's talk about the threats. Do you see a threat emerging, looming in the AFC West?
AFC West, I mean, you have to respect the Denver Broncos, what they've been doing defensively. They look like they're for real on that side of the football. I don't know how far you can go with a rookie quarterback, but I think if you're talking about the top 3 defenses in the NFL, the Minnesota Vikings and the Denver Broncos are going to be on a lot of people's list this year. And the Chargers will probably get better as they get healthier, and Jim Harbaugh puts his stamp on that team. But if you're looking for a team outside of the AFC West that could be a threat to the Chiefs, I mean, I think they've got some L's coming on that schedule. I think the Niners are going to be tough. The Texans will be tough. The Bills will be tough. And those 2 teams, the Broncos and the Chargers, would not surprise me if either one of those teams beat the Chiefs as well.
Yeah. All right. Beat them, but are they a threat to win the division?
No. No.
Yeah. Okay. So Denver looks salty. Denver could get them once, but Denver's not going to get them big picture wise. Sam, do you agree? There's still no threat looming in the AFC West, or do you think Denver or maybe the Chargers getting together once they get a little more time with Jim Harbaugh? I don't think anybody's going to point to the Raiders, but do you see anyone being a threat in the AFC West?
No, I mean, this division was over a month into the season, this division race. I mean, the Chargers, I think, are the second best team in the division, but the toughest matchup for the Chiefs is the Broncos. And I am highly skeptical that they can move the football against the Chiefs, but I think their defense, particularly the areas of strength of their defense, could give the Chiefs some problems. I mean, they're tied with the Vikings in terms of negative EPA per play, but they stop the run, which the Chiefs have run the ball well this year. They're 7th in EPA against the run, and they cover well. And, they've got an interior lineman that's been given people a lot of problems with Zach Allen. I think Zach Allen has got to be one of the surprises of the league this year. And, he matches up against the Chiefs' strength. That's going to be a really exciting matchup to see him go against the Chiefs' interior. Can anybody win the AFC West besides the Chiefs? I don't think so, but I agree with Jeff that it's not going to surprise me if one of these teams knocks off the Chiefs one game, because, like I said, I mean, the Broncos defense is real, and we have a lot of questions about the Chiefs offense just because of injury related. These teams could give the Chiefs some problems.
Yeah. I think they can have issues. I don't think they're going to go undefeated. Although if they beat the 49ers, I'm going to start that discussion, because I'm not going to miss the opportunity to talk about it for at least 2 or 3 weeks if it gets there, because I think then you start to look pretty legit. The Niners look legit off their win on Thursday night, so it looks like they're finding themselves. The Ravens look legit, but of course the Chiefs have already gotten by them, so they don't have to find them. If not the AFC West, what about anywhere in the AFC in general to get to the Super Bowl? But is there a team? Do you think the Vikings are all that, and like the Chiefs would fear them if they got into a Super Bowl, Jeff?
I think this year the Chiefs are in a realm we haven't seen them in the Patrick Mahomes era, where they're very human. I wouldn't even say they're vulnerable. I think they're like everybody else in the mix right now. Their record may obscure that part of the conversation, but I don't think because they're 5-0 that they're a dominant team. Like I think Minnesota. I think you look at Houston. You look at Baltimore. You look at Buffalo when Buffalo's played 2 really good teams, and I know they've taken some hits, but they're a good team too. Detroit, Green Bay. There's a lot of teams out there that would give the Chiefs problems, and so that's especially in the current state of the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs don't have a lot of playmakers on offense, and no matter how we want to slice it, as far as what this defense is called or how we describe it, they still have to have that to win championships. They're not going to go out there and win a game 3-0. They're going to have an offense that can put up points. And I just don't know. Put it this way. If anybody sits here and thinks they're not going to have more injuries throughout the course of the season, they're kidding themselves.
Yeah. Wins are a stat, Jeff. That's what Sean says there for you. I like this one. Do problems equal losses from Whiskey and Washers? I mean, they have problems, I think, for sure. But I think every team has problems. Sam, when you look at this club, do you see a threat outside the AFC West? All right, you've got them in as the AFC West champions, and injuries can change everything. I think we all would acknowledge that. Do you see the Vikings as being definitively better? Do you see anybody definitively better than the Chiefs right now?
No, I mean, I still think the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL, but that doesn't mean that, there's not threats. It was after week 1 where they beat the Ravens, and we had the same discussion as who's the biggest threat to the Chiefs, and I said the Ravens. And I still think that's the case. I still think that, when you look at the betting markets, the Ravens are the second best team in the NFL, and there's a reason for that. Like, they can move the ball in different ways. They're more explosive with Derrick Henry, for some reason, hasn't aged as a running back despite just getting a ridiculous workload in his mid-20s. But I still think the Ravens are probably the best team, but even the Ravens are more flawed than they were a year ago. Their defense hasn't gotten to where it was a year ago.
Yeah. I do think the Ravens look great on offense right now, but you hit on it. I mean, the Bengals and Ravens couldn't stop anybody. They made, both their offenses looked absolutely unstoppable, but they didn't look unstoppable against the Chiefs. I mean, that is the one thing. Now, I think they're playing better offensive football now than maybe they played against the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are playing better offensive football. So sometimes the schedule is not just about who you play, it's when you play them. And I do think Andy Reid's great coming out of the gates. And so that was probably bad news for the Ravens and Bengals to draw them early, because certainly the Bengals, we know, are not a team that starts well. So that was a bad spot for them to catch the Chiefs. I look at it and I'd love to say, I like the Texans. That's the team that has the best record in the AFC, 4-1. We're not giving the Texans a shot to be that team that scares them, Jeff. Do you see enough out of them?
Oh, yeah. No, they're top of my list. Even over the Ravens. Now, you don't know how long Nico Collins is going to be out with his hamstring, or that's going to be a lingering issue for him. But Joe Mixon gets healthy. He gets right. Collins gets right. I mean, you look at them offensively and defensively. I mean, the only team that's really giving them problems is the Vikings, who, again, are playing almost historic defense right now. Like, look at them compared to everybody else in the league defensively. Like, they are like way up here. Everybody else is down here. But C.J. Stroud, that supporting cast, the offensive line has got talent. That defensive line with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. I mean, they cover well. I mean, they got a lot of things. They will get better over time. And they go back to what people were saying about the record. Look, week 5, if the Chiefs were sitting here at 3-2, we'd still be saying they're going to win the AFC West. They're still going to make a deep run in the playoffs and challenge for a Super Bowl. Just because they're 5-0 doesn't mean that's an indication of how great they are compared to everybody else. It's just when they were 3-4 a few years ago, people were like, they're going to be fine. So I think that there are teams out there that are finding their legs. And I think I put the Bengals in that mix too. When the Bengals, if they can figure their defense out, I expect them to probably make a move at the trade deadline. They'll be in that mix too.
Yeah. Where do you sit on the Texans, Sam? I think there are a lot of teams that are threats that could beat them in a single elimination tournament like the NFL playoffs are. That means you're not guaranteed. I think we'd all take the field as semi-knowledgeable mathematicians. No Eric Eagers here, but we'd all take the field over the Chiefs right now. But we'd say the Chiefs are the favorite. I'm not buying on the Texans. I think the Texans, I think Buffalo played about as bad as they could play and pretty much still had to hand them the game at the end. I'm not buying the Texans, who are the only other team in the AFC with 4 or more wins.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, I think the Texans are good and certainly could beat the Chiefs. But if I'm ranking teams that the Chiefs don't want to see in the playoffs, if the playoffs started next week, I'm picking the Ravens first. I'm picking the Bills second. I'm still probably picking the Bengals third. There's questions about whether or not the Bengals have enough time to make up the ground to get there, but because they've got a tough schedule still remaining. But the Texans' offense has been very one-dimensional this year, and I think Steve Spagnuolo takes advantage of one-dimensional offenses. But look, I mean, their defense is legit. Their defense has given some teams some problems as well this year, and they certainly could beat the Chiefs. They're not one of the top 3 teams, I think, right now that the Chiefs would least like to face.
Serving the entire Midwest area and the greater Kansas City area, David Starnes Allstate Insurance is the name you need to remember if you need insurance of any kind. David Starnes Allstate Insurance, serving the Kansas City area and all throughout the Midwest. With David Starnes Allstate, it's not just about fender benders. Beyond traditional safeguards, enjoy perks like roadside assistance for unexpected breakdowns, transportation expense coverage when your car is in the shop, auto replacement protection to keep you on the road in style, and much more. You can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Gay and Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Get your seal coating done now before the weather turns cold. Weekends are booking up fast. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. All right, Jeff, let's talk about where the Chiefs' first loss comes. Despite my passion to talk undefeated season about the Kansas City Chiefs, it's very, 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 very likely that they are going to lose a game. Where is the first one?
I think it's San Francisco. And that's I know a risky thing coming off a bye. Andy Reid that much time, and with the Niners, man, they're beat up a lot of places, but they found a way to get a win last night, and they're still very well coached. They still have a lot of talent, and I think they still match up well with the Chiefs. I can't underscore enough that the Chiefs, without that level of offensive playmaking ability, it just makes it hard to see them doing what they did against the Saints week in and week out. And you're going on the road, you're playing a team that wants to beat you badly based on what's happened in the last couple of Super Bowls. And you're talking about a team that's trying to turn its own season around, trying to get some momentum going. They haven't won a game. That was the first game they won in the NFC West in the NFC last night in 4 tries. So I think that the Niners are going to be pretty tough. And I'll be honest with you, I think the Niners, the Bills, and the Bucs are all capable of beating the Chiefs, and I think probably a couple will.
Yeah. Quick sidebar here. Is your wife's maiden name Sam Marshall? Noah John Marshall here. Sam is so smart. Sam is a teacher. He's so smart. I do like he's so smart. Actually, if I were to quote it directly, but he's typing quickly, so I'm not gonna grade on anything. How about the Sam McDowell fan club is here
Yeah.
live and in person for the Red Gold and Bold stream. What about their first loss, Sam? Besides your family, that's big listeners here of the Red Gold and Bold. Where do you see their first loss coming?
I think it's their next game. I mean, I agree with Jeff. I think the 49ers get them. The 49ers are an early favorite in that game, as a 3-loss team against an undefeated team, which, I think disproves the thought that you are what your record is, as somebody said earlier. I mean, that's not exactly accurate. The difficulty of picking that is Andy Reid is not only good after buys. Where he's particularly good is when he has a bye and the other team does not have the week off. He's 29-3 or in those situations. It's why last year in week 17, I really advocated for the Chiefs to rest their players, because he's really good when all of his focus is on the next week and the opposition's is not. Having said that, the 49ers kind of have the same situation. I mean, they've got a little bit of a mini bye here after playing on Thursday night. And I also think that the 49ers have some desperation elements that the Chiefs do not. I mean, the 49ers did not expect to have a few losses already by October. And so I think they're going to be in a much hungrier position. I do think that matters. It's a road game. It's a long road trip. And obviously the Chiefs have won here before. They've won in California plenty of times. I'm not saying they can't win the game, but when we pick that game next week, I'll be picking the 49ers.
Are we a victim of recency bias here? That yes, they won and won impressively over the Seahawks. As well.
I didn't even watch the game last night because I was at the Royals game, so I'm not a victim of that.
I know they play.
Okay, 36-24, the Seahawks won, the 49ers beat the Seahawks. But a week before, they lost to the Cardinals 24-23. They lost at the Rams 27-24. They lost to the Vikings 23-17. Vikings are a good team. Rams are not. We thought they were going to be, but they have not been, and they're decimated by injuries. The 49ers are still dealing with injuries. Brandon Ayuk is throwing a tantrum on the sideline about what color shorts he's wearing. I mean, they were all kumbaya after the game. I was home, had both games up on the TV, and I watched them the post game. And the 49ers were taking a bit of a victory lap last night. There was a mindset that we're back, baby. We've got it all fixed. And that hasn't been the case. They've been pretty hot and cold. Are you sure, Jeff, that the 49ers are the 49ers, or are they the 3-3 team that their record? I mean, you believe in what Bill Parcells says. You are what your record says you are.
Well, he said that like 40 years ago. So I don't even know if that applies anymore to today's NFL, where
it does
off-season training and training camps. And I think people have to understand that September in the NFL now, the first 4 or 5 weeks, people are trying to figure out who they are, and they're trying to figure out what they can do and how to deal with injuries. A lot of teams, not just the Chiefs, have been banged up. And so that can be to go and look and say, well, they lost to this team or lost to that team. I go off talent. And that's one of the most talented teams in the NFL still. It's still one of the most well-coached teams in the NFL. It's different if you just look awful, like the Carolina Panthers. Like this team, how are they going to win games? But all those games you mentioned, the Niners actually were leading in 2 of those games, double digits, and blew the leads, the Rams game and the Cardinals game. And I just think that people just want to, again, have referendums every week. Well, this team has got this record, so they're better than everybody else. It's all these teams are in the same boat. And so for me, I think the Niners, when you start adding desperation to a mix of talent and coaching, I think you get better results. And I do think that they match up well with the Chiefs.
Well, I have Christian McCaffrey back as well, Sam. That's a weapon. Obviously, I know they're one of those teams. Kyle Shanahan's one of those coaches that can run the ball no matter who he has. And Mason's done a nice job. He got hurt. They bring in the rookie who's on my dynasty fantasy team. And I can't even remember. Is it Garanda? I should just look up should have just opened up the box score to have it in front of me. I can remember his name. But anyway,
stop gambling, Soren.
I know. He had just
didn't even know who you're betting.
Yes, he had 10 carries for 99 yards last night. So they do just run the ball, but getting Christian McCaffrey back will certainly help them as well, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, I still think the 49ers have probably in the 10 to 12 range of a defense, and they've got a top 5 offense. I mean, it's not really that complicated for why I still think they're a good team. And As far as you are what your record are, it's just not accurate. I mean, and if we go by teams losing bad games, I went out to Arrowhead last year and watched the Chiefs get beat up by the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah.
And they still won the Super Bowl. Like, this happens in this league. This first 5 weeks of the season have been the smallest spreads in NFL history for the first 5 weeks. Like, this league is compressed right now. Bad teams beat good teams in this league pretty frequently. It doesn't mean that suddenly the 49ers don't know how to play football. Like, they're still a very good team.
Yeah. By the way, I'm going to thoroughly enjoy this because Tommy Moe loves to point out when we're wrong. His name is not Guerrero. It's Guerendo. Guerendo. So, Tommy, stick it.
That Tommy also saying they have the same offense they had 2 years ago when they beat them.
Yeah.
San Francisco.
Tommy's a sniper. He is, trust me. And he likes to get under people's skin. So there you go, Tommy. Bite that one. But he's a good guy. I know Tommy for a long, long time. But he is an insufferable pain in the ass. And he, by the way, he's got a big smile when I say that right now because that is his goal in life. All right. Can the Chiefs realistically acquire a wide receiver, Sam? Is there one that's out there that you think that they can target? I don't think it's maybe necessarily priority number one, but is there an attainable wide receiver that makes sense that the other team would be willing to give up? I love when people are wanting to trade away wideouts that are on 4-2 teams. Like, they're not giving up, they're in it, right? But as we inch closer to the deadline, is there somebody you think would be realistic, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think they could give up, a late round pick for somebody. And I do think that time comes, to your point about current records, as you get closer to the deadline. But yeah, I mean, I think there's guys out there that would play for him. I mean, Demarcus Robinson for the Rams, I still think he could help them. The Rams, I don't think look like they're going anywhere, and I think they'll get wide receivers back, and therefore they'll be more willing to part with their own. But I mean, it's not the only one, but I just think that when we talked about this last week, it was too early, and eventually that part's going to be what changes, and then you are going to have the willingness from other sides. But look, if they're not making calls right now, they're not doing it right, and they certainly are scouring to see what they can do at that position.
Yeah, I definitely think they're looking, Jeff. I also think like the Devontae Adams of the world, we've talked here, that's not going to fit cap-wise. Talk about Amari Cooper. I think that the demand would be too much. I think you're talking more like Demarcus Robinson types. I bring it up just for a guy that people are familiar with, and that's a Rams receiver that could be out there. But also, at the end of the day, if you're getting down there, how much better is Demarcus Robinson than, say, Justin Ross that you could promote off your practice squad? Do you see anyone that's a reasonable target?
Well, that's where I'm at. I mean, I'll give you another name, Byron Pringle, who's been unemployed for about a month. So going back to the who's unemployed, who played for the Chiefs storyline. I mean, here's another guy that the Commanders let go of a month ago, who's out there not doing anything, who knows their system. But again, to your point, how do you improve what you have with those kinds of players? The idea that, a Devontae Adams and Amari Cooper. I heard somebody throw out George Pickens. It's crazy. Some of the names being thrown out there, oh, I want to get married. I'm going to go date a supermodel. It doesn't work that way. I mean, the guys they've gotten in the past. What's that?
The Chiefs could have had George Pickens in the draft if they wanted him. I think the Chiefs told us what they thought of the potential George Pickens fit in their locker room when they passed up on George Pickens.
Yeah, and traded down.
Because they knew they're not surprised by George Pickens' talent. Yeah. And I think they're also not surprised that there's other conversations in Pittsburgh right now where you've got players trying to convince him that the most important thing is winning.
Yeah. I did just to follow up on that. I talked to a personnel guy on another team who told me George Pickens wasn't even on their board. So there were severe red flags with George Pickens when he was coming out of the draft.
Yeah. Yeah. And that goes back, and Sam made the point earlier about just how compressed this league is. Every team, unless you're a disaster, come early November, is going to think I've got a shot at being in here. There's been a number of 9-win teams, even an 8-win team, make the playoffs within the last 3 years since they've gone to a 17-game schedule. So if you're anybody who has any kind of hope, even the Browns, if the Browns say we're going to play Jameis Winston and sit Deshaun Watson, they're not getting rid of Amari Cooper, who's their best receiver. I mean, so I think the answer again is going to have to be within the Chiefs' current roster.
By the way, when it was like Odell Beckham Jr. just have to average negative 2 yards a reception before somebody goes, he can't freaking play. Like, he's a pain in the ass, and he really is just a jag now at this point. Odell Beckham Jr. is not 8 years ago's Odell Beckham Jr.
See AFC Championship game, Odell Beckham last year.
No offense, Tyler. I mean, I know you come around to it, and the Chiefs they've gone for LaShawn McCoy and Le'Veon Bell, so it's not a ridiculous comment. I just don't know why fans want him. He hasn't really peed a drop in years. And so to me, why would you bring in a guy who's a me guy and disrupt what seems to be a team that chemistry-wise, can we agree that right now, with all their injuries, the sum is greater than the parts, right? They've got some really good parts. We all think that Brett Veach has done a fine job, good to very good or great, whatever label you want to put on it. He hasn't done a bad job. There's good talent on this team. But right now it all fits, and the sum of their parts is better. You don't want to bring in someone that's going to disrupt that.
Yeah.
Agree on that?
Yeah. And that's probably a big reason why they're 5-0, because you look at what they've gone through, they probably should be 3-2 or 2-3 right now, and easily could be with some plays in some games. But you start messing with the chemistry, it's like messing with the foundation of your house. At some point, it's going to cause things to crumble in on themselves.
Yeah, it ends up being a problem one way or another. It eventually just comes around to being that. If you've got problems when it comes to an accident, Northland Injury Law is Kansas City's #1 accident lawyer. Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, and other personal injuries. Northland Injury Law doesn't get paid unless they get money for their client. Don't wait. Get compensated now. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222. Or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements.
Besame Wellness for all your cannabis needs. With fast, easy, and discreet delivery, you can enjoy the same deals you enjoy in-store, but delivered to your home or office. Even same day. Restrictions may apply. Any questions? Let Besame's top-rated customer service team assist you. And this Chiefs season, don't miss a minute of the game with no delivery fees on game days. And when the home team wins, so do you. Use promo code 3PEAT and receive some extra free goodies with your next Besame order. Don't forget, you can still use promo code podcast25 to save 25% on your entire order for online delivery or at any of their 5 area Besame locations.
I know Sam's a big fan of the free goodies, that's for sure. All right, have we answered all the questions about the #2 corner? Jeff, is that in the rearview mirror now? We convinced that they've got it all figured out?
Figuring it out is, I think, a lot of what Steve Spagnuolo has done. Instead of asking for more talent in that position, he's gone with more scheming to help that position not be a liability, which I think is smart. And so in that regard, I think that it's been a pleasant surprise. Now, again, I would caution you to say that looking at the 49ers, this will be the first team they're playing that has multiple guys on the outside who can cause you problems. Like, they really haven't been able to. I think Atlanta had that. Darnell Mooney had a good game against Atlanta. He wasn't always covered by Jalen Watson, but he played well in that game. The Bengals didn't have T. Higgins. I'm not a big fan of what they have at receiver with the Ravens outside of Zay Flowers. The Chargers have like a rookie, and clearly the Niners, the Saints were they handled them pretty well. And so I think you'll start seeing these teams that have multiple guys on the outside and more dynamic quarterback play. And I think that's when you'll get a better sense of what Jalen Watson is. But for now, I think the game plan is let's have Trent McDuffie, handle the #1 guy, and let's help everybody else on that side of the football.
Sam, is it solved? No, nothing to see here anymore when it comes to that secondary?
No, I mean, look, Jalen Watson is capable of having a bad day, but I mean, he's been one of the best surprises for the Chiefs season. This was, I think, should have been their biggest concern going into the year, was what they were going to do behind Trent McDuffie at cornerback. And Steve Spagnuolo multiple times throughout training camp and even the week of the Ravens game was saying, I don't know who we're going to play at the second cornerback behind Trent McDuffie. He's allowed a 73.7 quarterback rating this year. That number last year was 104. and he's only had one penalty accepted against him all year. And, even L'Jarius Sneed, who had a terrific year a year ago, led the league in penalties. Like, that's not easy to play that position and play it well without getting flagged. And there's no doubt that Jalen Watson is part of opposing teams' game plans as well, because they don't want to go after Trent McDuffie. And so the best option for them in the passing game is to go after Jalen Watson. Their cornerbacks have been helped by they lead the league in pressure percentage, even despite their edges not getting a lot of pressure. They still blitz a lot. They're fourth in the league in blitz percentage. And so, like Steve Spagnuolo, to Jeff's point, scheme wise, like, he helps his cornerbacks. But the bigger story to me is, a year ago, I think we all thought Joshua Williams was kind of on the come up for the Chiefs, and he not only didn't win this job over Jalen Watson, he's been demoted below Najee Johnson now. Yeah, he's not getting defensive snaps. He's basically become this special teams ace for him. And so, look, that's partly a credit to Jalen Watson, but I think there's some disappointment that Joshua Williams hasn't taken that step forward for him this year.
And I'll say one more thing about this too, is that every game, I think the Chargers game too, they've had an explosive play given up, a play of 30 to 40 plus yards. And a lot of it looks like miscommunication to me. And you see that happen when people are trying to cover it for other things. Like when L'Jarius Sneed was there, it was, I got you, I'm covering you. But you got guys breaking wide open, it's because especially the last game when you saw the touchdown to Rashid Shaheed, quarterbacks and opposing offenses know if they can get on top of the Chiefs safeties, and when safeties are trying to help corners, big plays can happen. So that, to me, again, why I'm not loving this secondary just yet.
Yeah, I do think the secondary as a whole has been obviously very good. But I think your point about Josh Williams, Sam, it does say that maybe they're a little thin. Like right now, everything's fine, but if they lose a guy, if Watson goes down, if McDuffie, anybody loses a star, it's going to hurt, right? So losing a McDuffie, a Chris Jones, a Patrick Mahomes, we know that's a devastating injury for any team that's out there. But it could be that, listen, everything looks great right now, but where the loss of L'Jarius Sneed really shows itself is if they lose another guy, right? And then at that point, Josh Williams gets elevated, and can he play at the highest level? So maybe it's all taken care of right now, but they're an injury away. I will say this, and Pro Football Focus's grades aren't the end all be all, but it's at least an unbiased group of people with a trained eye trying to, evaluate players. 29th of 101 corners. Trent McDuffie, 11th of 101 corners. It does speak to how well Watson has played this year. And that was the big question mark. Like Josh Williams had the top 10 grade for corners last year. We said, well, if you bump him up to number 2 and he's not covering the third wideout anymore, how's that going to look? Well, so far the answer is it looks like he plays special teams. So, I don't know that we want to see Watson on ones all the time, but being out there and being on one of the top couple of wide receivers, he's been very good. And I think it also speaks to the overall scheme and coaching ability of Steve Spagnuolo, Dave Merritt. They just do a great job. And so, they kind of spooked us, though. It was all they're talking about it that has. I think we all went up to St. Joe going, yeah, they got this. It'll be fine. That's what they do. They do DBs. And then every time we'd ask the question and Spagnuolo wouldn't answer it with a definitive answer, they had us all panicked. And in the end, it's been really good.
I think they're probably still a little bit spooked about that possibility. Sam's there a lot. I don't hear them. Jalen Watson is killing it. Can't believe how well he's playing talk. It feels like they're like, okay, we're holding this together, but we don't want the dam bursting. If it, that could be ugly.
At this point, we don't trust Spags, like WTF, let it ride. I like that. In Spags, we trust. I think that's a fair way to have it. Do we trust in Jawaan Taylor? Listen, he's 4th in the league in penalties right now. Do we see this as a problem, or the fact that he was 1st in the league in penalties last year? Do we see this as a sign of great progress, Jeff?
Well, I wish we had Eric here. Sam could he's a teacher now, but I'm trying to figure out what he's trending for as far as overall penalties. I think he's going to finish in the top 5 again. Look, I think that his flaws have probably been obscured by what's happening on the other side with the left tackle position. The thing about him that scares me is that, again, when you start seeing teams that have better pass rushers and you start seeing teams that can really take advantage of Wanye Morris, I don't think we're going to see Kingsley Suamataia anytime soon, but it's Jawaan Taylor. You could manage that last year because there was a veteran in Donovan Smith and the offensive line really worked well together. I feel like on the edge, like we could see a lot more penalties coming against teams that are going to be able to get after the passer.
Yeah. Where do you sit on Jawaan Taylor, Sam? Do you see progress at least? Just same old Jawaan Taylor. He's just, it's almost impossible to catch up to the pace he set after the first week last year. What do you see him as?
Yeah, I mean, I think even more than what they have at wide receiver right now, the biggest concern for the Chiefs offense is the tackles. I mean, the tackles were really bad against the Saints. They gave up a lot of pressures, and I think Patrick Mahomes has adjusted to who he's throwing to. I don't think he's quite adjusted yet to the fact his tackles are giving him a lot of problems. You see, when you watch the film, Patrick Mahomes frequently, his first look, whether it's in the wide receiver, is looking at his offensive line. And that's not typical for him. And so I mean, you look at the penalties alone. I mean, Jawaan Taylor has been like just a below average guy in terms of pass protection. He's not been terrible. I think a lot of people here think he's been terrible because you hear his number called too frequently by the official. We saw Andy Reid though give Jawaan Taylor a pretty nasty look after that touchdown.
That's what I was thinking about.
That holding play. And what's surprising to me about that is Jawaan Taylor's not had a lot of issues post-snap in terms of penalties. That was only his second post-snap penalty of the year. He's had 5 false starts. And I looked up like last year's penalty, and any penalty that an offensive lineman is allowed to be called, like Jawaan Taylor plucked it at some point during the season. I mean, he had 9 false starts, 8 holdings, 3 illegal formations, 1 illegal block above the waist, 1 illegal use of hands, and 1 face mask, which of course went for a safety in New York. Like, he got called for everything. A year ago, it's just been 5 false starts, and that was a second holding penalty. So if you want to look for improvement, I think he is getting called for fewer penalties after the snap this year.
Tommy Mo made the point. Andrew Wiley, 3 for 21 to Washington, looks pretty good right now. I think there's some truth in that. I think,
absolutely. Yeah.
I think there's some revisionist history too, though. Andrew Wiley at left tackle looks terrifying. And when they signed that deal, there was a chance that Jawaan Taylor was going to end up playing left tackle. Donovan Smith wasn't here. So there's a little bit of revisionist history, but it's a fair point. I actually would add to what you said, Sam. I actually think, like you said, post snap, I don't think he's that bad. I think he's exactly what you knew he'd be. He's a solid right tackle that for the most part has been pretty healthy. He was younger, and that's one of the things they look for. I think you know what you're getting. And I even will defend some of his false starts from the standpoint of snap the ball, Creed Humphrey. Like he is quick. Jawaan Taylor is really quick, and he comes out of that stance. Some of that I think is the snap is a little bit slow.
Well, if Jawaan Taylor's the only guy doing it though, why isn't the left tackle moving early too? Then
I agree. Listen. He is I'm not trying to say he's not part of the problem. He is part of the problem, and he's 75% of it. But I think there's a little bit of Creed Humphrey snaps might be a little bit slow, and Jawaan Taylor's just that quick getting off the ball. I mean, there are times that I see it, it's like you hear Mahomes saying hut, and he is moving. He is anticipating the snap count, and I think that's part of where they just as a whole got to get on the same page. If they're like, hold your water, stay there, you're quick enough, you're athletic enough, you can do it, and he's not doing it, then it's on him, right? But
that is where it is. What you just described is where it is. Like all the coaching points on that play for them is Jawaan Taylor, you're moving too early. I mean, Andy Reid says it publicly, but I'd push back on one thing you said as far as this is who they thought he was. They thought he was going to be their left tackle when they signed him. Like this, and
they thought he could be their left tackle. I don't think they were talking to Donovan Smith at that time. They just hadn't done the deal.
If they anticipated that he was going to be this, then why did they pay him the most money of any right tackle?
Great question, Sam.
He's still third on. He's still third on that list. It's not like this market is just like he reset the market and everyone's continued to top him. He's still third on that list 2 years later.
No, I agree, because in free agency you have to overpay to go get guys, and tackles there aren't any. What tackles have come about in free agency since then? Like they just don't get to the market. So if you get one that's any good at all, you got to overpay. Look at Jacksonville. Look at what they're paying for their tackle. I mean, that's just the market. I mean, there are not that many human beings that are 6'5" plus 320 plus pounds and can move. And when they get on the market, they go for top dollar. You have to overpay to get him. I think it's just
well, the other problem is they can't afford the kind of penalties he's having in a season like this with what they have offensively. They got away with it last year, but you're talking about 2nd and 15 or 3rd and 12, whatever. Like long yardage, it just making this offense one-dimensional is going to be hard on it.
I mean,
We'll talk. Go ahead.
you're paying Jawaan Taylor per year what that Andrew Wiley contract was over 3 years. Wiley's given up fewer pressures than Jawaan Taylor has, and I don't think it's just comparing it to what other right tackles you could have had. That $80 million could have been spent on a wide receiver. That $80 million could have been spent elsewhere. It's not just, what other right tackles could you get for $80 million?
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. And listen, right now, Andrew Wiley for that price would have been a better value. I don't disagree with the overall point. All right, we'll come back here in a second. We'll talk about the defensive line. Is anyone but Chris Jones really showing up and playing? David Starnes Allstate Insurance. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free. Covering all the important things in your world: home, business, life, and even the fun stuff, as well as your motorcycle, boat, ATV, and you name it. Get with Dave, and he'll get you covered. You can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations: North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave today. He'll give you peace of mind for the things in your life most important to you. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized, full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems? They've been making them disappear in KC since 1994. Don't risk accidents and liability in your parking lot. Get your lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot will cut down on accidents and keep your lot as safe as possible. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. All right, let's talk about that defensive line. George Karlaftis and Michael Danna listen to sacks right now. 3 for Chris Jones, 1.5 for.
Is that you, Jeff?
What?
Is that the hovercraft? That's good.
They said I was cutting the grass out there somewhere.
Oh,
yeah. Are they cutting it inside?
I guess you can hear that.
Comes with the 10 a.m. start time, right? It's just part of what we live with, right? It's just reality. The defensive line, we've got, right now, 3 sacks for Chris Jones, 1.5, 1. Michael Danna and George Karlaftis, are these guys that the numbers are going to be there later and they're doing a decent job of getting pressures, or do they have to play better for this defense to be able to get to where it wants to go?
This elite defense you're talking about?
That's right. I would call it elite. Yes.
Yeah. They got to play better. Look, I pat myself on the back for making the bold prediction that Michael Danna would not live up to that contract he got in the offseason, and you're seeing the reality of that right now. Karlaftis is, to me, I think there are going to be years when it's like this. He's just not a dominant, bend at the waist, blow up the quarterback edge rusher. He needs to have help. Now, Chris Jones is doing his part, but ultimately what happens in this league is the longer you play, the longer you're in this, as long as you're out there, the more people get a beat on what you do well and how to attack you. And so right now you're seeing a lot of trouble for these guys. And again, I haven't gone back and watched the film and seen exactly how it breaks down. I would almost bet you that a lot of these guys got sacks last year when they were bringing pressure. Extra defenders. I don't know how often they just line up with 4 guys and these guys just won. So they got to be better overall at that position.
Sam, I think they're 10th in yards allowed coming into this week, 5th in points allowed. Are we just picking nits here when we talk about that the sack totals aren't there for the edge rushers?
Well, I do think one of the reasons that we're not seeing the pressure rates from the edges is because the Chiefs did make a real concentration to become much better against the run this year, and those guys are good against the run for edge guys. I mean, they're not guys that just dart up into the backfield and you can run right by them. We haven't seen a lot of those gaps open this year, but it's noticeable the fact that they're not generating the same pressure they were a year ago. I mean, Karlaftis is at 11.3 pressure rate. That's 3% less than it was last year. Mike Danna is the 4th lowest pressure rate among the 50 edge rushers in the league that have 100 pass snaps this year. Like, he is just not generating much pressure at all. The thing they like about Mike Danna is that they can move him around. I think he knows his assignment. I mean, there's players in the locker room last year that, were kind of pounding the table saying Mike Danna was the guy not getting enough credit for their way they were playing defensively last year. And I think it's just because he doesn't miss his assignment, but he's never been a guy that just you watch on tape and say, wow, look at Mike Danna. That guy's really popping out to me. Like, that's never been his strength. But I didn't think the Chiefs were going to blitz quite as much this year because of the cornerback situation. And I think if you really pressed Steve Spagnuolo on and got him an honest reply from him, I think he would tell you he didn't anticipate blitzing as much because of their secondary situation. But he's had to. And I think that is because of this situation that you're talking about, which is the edge rushers aren't generating as much pressure as they did a year ago on their own.
Yeah,
If only there was a guy out there with a first round pick on him that could contribute. Who would that be? Who would we ask of that?
Are you talking about in-house Felix Anudike-Uzomah? Oh, yeah. Sure, for sure. Absolutely. And I think that was the plan, is that he would have solved this issue. And we said it. When they re-signed Mike Dana, it's not a good sign, right? Like, he was drafted to be the replacement. And when they put that money into Mike Dana, they were saying, we don't think this kid's ready. And he hasn't been to this point. And we're getting to where, edge rusher, okay, 1 year he had the thumb, he's back. But in year 2, you ought to start showing something. And we're not really seeing it. I think it's time to admit that he's, in all likelihood, just going to be a rotational guy that gets snaps to give people rest, but he's not going to be a difference maker. And so I do think that we talk about, this is where the defense is thin. We mentioned it with the corners, but, not getting that rush means you got to blitz all the time. It's been really effective. I'm shocked at how effective it's been. They came with 8 guys one time in the last game against the Saints. 8!
And our Jesse Newell pointed this out, that he looked up how many times a team has brought 8 guys outside the red zone as a defense, and it's the first time that happened this year.
Yeah, and that was, I think, the game clinching play, right? That was the one that
Carr got hurt on.
Yeah, when they brought that kind of heat. I mean, I don't know that's.
He threw a great pass though.
Yeah.
He did throw a good ball. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, he has skills. Look, we're always brought to you here at the Red Gold and Bold podcast by our friends at David Starnes Allstate Insurance. You can give them a call if you got any insurance needs, 816-781-7331. Of course, our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, rocking Kansas City with the best parking lot work for 30 years. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty with Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Besame Wellness. Don't forget, use promo code podcast25 to save 25% on your entire order for online delivery or at any of their 5 area Besame locations. And of course, our friends at Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers. If you got a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222 or call 816-400-HURT. Choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. Listen, you can support the Red Gold and Bold podcast by giving us those likes, those loves. Tell your friends about it. Also by supporting our great sponsors, David Starnes Allstate Insurance, Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Northland Injury Law, and Besame Wellness. For Jeffri Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com, Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, this is Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red Gold and Bold podcast.